I am going to show you how to simplify square roots. So in Math 8, we learned how to estimate square roots to the nearest tenth. But what we're doing in Algebra 1 is we're simplifying square roots. So we don't want decimals. Our answers are still going to have a square root, but they're going to be the reduced form. So simplifying is just another way of reducing. Okay, so let's start by refreshing your memory that if we had the square root of 25, that would be 5 or negative 5, but we're going to deal with positives for what we're doing. If we had the square root of 81, that would be 9. Okay, now what we're going to do is something like square root of 24. All right, so we need to figure out what number multiplied by itself equals 24, but we're not doing a decimal, so all we want to do is reduce it. Now we know that this is not one of our perfect squares. We made flashcards. This was not one of our flashcards. So what we're going to do is we are going to break this down. All right, so 24 is 4 times 6. So the square root of 4 times the square root of 6 would equal the square root of 24. So this is just basic multiplication that I'm doing here. All right, now I know that the square root of 4 is a 2. I don't know the square root of 6. I can try and break it down more. I get the square root of 2 and the square root of 3, but that doesn't help me at all. So the simplified or reduced form of the square root of 24 would be 2 square root 6. So that is your answer. All right, so basically what we're doing is we're trying to find any perfect squares that we can pull out. We're going to pull out, and then what's left over stays inside the square root. All right, so let's try another one. So, I guess we could call this example 2, I suppose. Let's say we're doing the square root of 75. All right, so 75 is not a perfect square. So we want to break it down into two numbers that will multiply to be 75. Now, what we're trying to also do is make one of them be a perfect square. So I know that 25 will go into this. So 25 times 3 equals 75. So the square root of 25 times the square root of 3 would equal the square root of 75. All right, I know the answer to this is a 5. There's nothing else I can do here. So the reduced form of the square root of 75 is 5 square root 3. And that's your answer. All right, let's try, move this up a smidge. For example 3. Example 3. Let's say we had the square root of 48. All right, now we need to break this into square root times square root. So you got to think about what multiplies to be 48. Well, 24 times 2 does, but I don't know the square root of 24 or 2. I do know 4 times 12 equals 48. So the square root of 4 times the square root of 12 will equal the square root of 48. I know that the square root of 4 is 2. All right, now I'm going to check 12, and I can break that down. 12 would be 6 and 2, but I don't know those square roots. But I know 4 times 3 equals 12, which means the square root of 4 times the square root of 3 would equal the square root of 12. And I know that one is a 2, So what I have now is 2, 2, and the square root of 3. Now, all of these things were multiplied together, so I need to do 2 times 2, so 4, and then square root of 3 was left inside because I don't know that one. All right, let's try, oops, sorry, move around here. I think I can fit another one down here. For example 4, how about square root of 72? All right, so we got to think of what numbers we know that will go into the square root of 72. So I'm thinking 9 times 8. All right, I know that the square root of 9 is 3. All right, so now we need to check square root of 8. Can we break that? And we can, because that would be 4 times 2. So the square root of 4 times the square root of 2 would be the square root of 8. We know that square root of 4 is 2. So now I can't do anything else here, so I'm done. So I have 3 times 2 times the square root of 2, which would be 6 square root 2. So that is the reduced form of the square root of 72. All right. I think I might just go over here. Okay, now let's see what happens if there's already something outside. So what I mean by that is, for example 5, let's say we had 3 square root of, let's do, we'll just do 20. That one's pretty easy. All right, so the 3 is already outside, so we don't really need to worry about it. But we do need to break down this square root of 20. So I know that 2 times 10 would be 20, but I don't know the square root of 2, and I don't know the square root of 10. But I'm thinking 4 times 5, so the square root of 4 times the square root of 5 would equal the square root of 20. And then I know that the square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 5 is finished. So I have this 2, but I already had the 3 out there. So we're just going to bring that down. So we have 3 times 2, and then the square root of 5, so that'll be 6 square root 5 for that one. So if anything that's already there, this is all multiplication. So just keep in mind that anytime we're dealing with square roots, we're dealing with multiplication. All right, how about, let's see, let's say we have 4 square root 125. All right, so the 4 is outside, so I don't need to worry about that, but I do need to reduce this. So since it ends in a 5, I know 5 will go into it. I don't know the square root of 5, though. But since it's 125, I know that 25 will go into it, and that just so happens to be times 5. So the square root of 25 times the square root of 5 would give me the square root of 125. I know the square root of 25 is 5. Square root of 5 can't be broken down anymore, so my answer to this one is going to be 4 times 5 with the square root of 5, so that would be 20 square root 5. All right, let's try one more. Let's see, how about, I'm trying to think of something that gives people trouble, but for the last one, let's do, how about square root of 108? All right, this one's kind of large, but all right, so we need to break down 108. I know I can divide by 2, but that would be 2 times 54, and I don't know those square roots. So I want to think of something else. So hopefully you know that 9 times 12 is 108. So the square root of 9 times the square root of 12 would be 108. So now I know the square root of 9 is 3, right? I can break down 12, and remember, we're looking for numbers that we know the square root of. So I know that 12 could be 2 times 6, but I don't know the square root of 2, and I don't know the square root of 6. So I need to do 4 times 3 for the 12. So this becomes a 2. So now the square root of 3 can't be broken down anymore. So now I have 3 times 2 with the square root of 3. So this would be 6 square root 3. And there you go. All right, so that covers simplifying square roots. So again, all you're trying to do is take the number that you're looking to find the square root of. You want to break it down, but one of them needs to be a perfect square. So you need to think about it, because another way we could break down 24 to be 2 times 12, but we don't know those. We could have also done 3 times 8, but we don't know those. So we always want to make sure that one of the numbers is going to be a perfect square. And then we can reduce that one, check to see if we can do anything else before we call it simplified.